Alright, good day everyone. So today we're gonna do another unboxing video. And this time it's gonna be the Hiya Toys Godzilla Exquisite Basic. But before we begin, I'd like to invite everyone to please subscribe to the channel and hit on the notification bell to get the latest updates from the hobbyists. So yeah, let's begin. So this is the Hiya Toys Godzilla Exquisite Basic figure. And it has made quite a buzz online when it was first released. It's a new company based from China, if I'm not mistaken. And what they did is they released some promo stills of their Godzilla lineup from Godzilla vs. Kong. And they first released the Stylist series, which we have reviewed as well. It's the non-articulated figure. And now they released the more articulated one, which rivals the top tier brands such as SH Monster Arts and NECA. And what's compelling about those stills was the figure looks awesome from the pictures, and basically, you know, they're selling it at quite a very low price. So pre-order sold out. Even my figures, when it was pre-ordered, they all sold out. Even my personal figure was bought from me. So yeah, when I was weighing on whether I'm gonna keep my figure or not, I decided not to. Partly because I'm leaning towards SH Monster Arts until, you know, this guy came in. But anyway, so yeah. So now, is it a wrong decision for me? I don't know. But we're gonna do this review, and I was fortunate enough to find a fellow Godzilla collector. Big shout out to Angelo James G for lending us his figure so that we could do this review for you guys. So yeah, so without further ado, this is what the box looks like. So it's quite tall. It's actually, I mean, for a Godzilla figure of around 6, 7, 8 inches in size, it's quite big. The box is pretty tall. Actually, the Stylist series has a big box also. But anyway, yeah, this is what the front of the box looks like. So it's reminiscent of what the Godzilla vs. Kong poster looks like. So it's kind of leaning towards that theme. And then on the side, again, a picture of the figure, Godzilla vs. Kong, some of the branding information. So being able to put all of these trademarks here, I'm inclined to think that they are in fact licensed. So again, on the other side, the same thing. So they have the brands Legendary Pictures, Monsterverse, and Toho, and of course their brand Hiya brand. Anyway, on the back of the box, this is what it looks like. So they have all their contact information, and so yeah, it's based in China. So again, they're called Hiya Toys Company Limited. And so yeah, so this is what the box looks like. On the bottom, it just says Godzilla vs. Kong. On the top, same thing, Godzilla vs. Kong. So yeah, without further ado, what we're gonna do is we are gonna open the box and finally see what the figure looks like. Okay, so out of the box, this is what we have. So we have the Godzilla figure. It doesn't come with any accessories. It doesn't come with, like, you know, it doesn't come with the breath effect. It doesn't come with a stand. It doesn't come with an extra pair of hands for any reason whatsoever. So it's just a figure. So, and as you can see, it's a nice figure. It's a little bit bigger than your average SH Monster Arts or even NECA figures for that matter. So later on, when we're doing the size comparisons, we'll get to that. First, let's look at the sculpt. So in terms of sculpt, this is a nicely sculpted figure. You can see a lot of the details on the skin, reminiscent of what it looks like in the movie. The spines, the dorsal plates are well made. They're not too sharp. They're actually a little bit soft. I like how they sculpted the face. So the eyes are done well. Even though it's bigger than the SH Monster Arts figure, those eyes are still pretty small. So really good sculpt overall. If you open up the mouth, there are some webbings on the, let me see if I can show that to you more closely. So if you look at the mouth, if you open up the mouth really wide, so you can see some webbing on the cheeks, which is a nice touch for such a, you know, inexpensive figure, and that's nicely done. So the tongue, there's also some sculpting on the tongue and on the roof of the mouth, which is really nice. I like the sculpt overall. And the gills of Godzilla is still there. So some of the negatives that I see in this figure, as you can, if you look at the dorsal plates on the especially the thicker ones, since this is basically made of a softer plastic, similar to how they did their NECA figures, the NECA figures before. Those plastic, especially if you leave them on the boxes for quite some time, they tend to warp at some point. I'm not sure if you could fix it with, you know, by applying some heat to it, but of course, since this is not my figure, I'm not gonna do that. But anyway, also another thing that I noticed is, and this one I saw when some of the promotional stills were released by Hiya Toys. There is this very obvious joint on the cheek of Godzilla, with the joint mark, or that circle over there. So it's just on one side though, so it's not on the other side, as you can see. So it's just on this side right here. So maybe if you are gonna pose the figure, you probably do this pose rather than doing the other side. And also, this is because they wanted to give more articulation to Godzilla. But as you can see, there is quite a gap here on the side, in between, on the neck area of Godzilla. And that gap is basically to give Godzilla more movement, to allow it to actually tilt its head all the way up. But even so, you're still gonna show that gap on the bottom instead. So you have to really be creative on how to pose this figure, and I think this is really one of the major things that ultimately made me decide not really to keep another Godzilla figure. Because if you're articulating it, unless you're gonna pose it like how it's supposed to be posed, like with Godzilla looking down, then it looks good, right? But if you pose it up, then you're gonna have a little bit of problems, because you're seeing a lot of those joints right there. So yeah, but it is what it is. Of course, you have to sacrifice something to get something else, and they wanted to give Godzilla more poses, so that's how they designed it. Is it a bit too long for me? I guess it is. And that's where, I mean, if you look at the SH Monster Arts figure, they inverted how they implemented the joint here. So the joints are the accordion of the joints is from the out going in. Here is inside going out. So yeah, so this one, because of the arrangement of the joints, if you move Godzilla's head up, then it hides all of that gaps that this one obviously shows. So yeah, so that's it for the scope. In terms of articulation, but don't get me wrong, I mean, I love how they did the head on this Godzilla, everything. I mean, if you compare the scope between the SH Monster Arts and the Hiya Toys right here, and I'm already doing the comparison now. As you can see, this one is very movie accurate. The shape of the head is sloping upwards. This one is pretty much flat, and that's kind of where most of the fans are irked with, because it doesn't really look like how Godzilla looks in the movie. The original legendary Godzilla is chunkier, and I mean really chunky in terms of scope. And as you can see here, it has more man belly on all sides compared to the SH Monster Arts figure. The SH Monster Arts figure, they implemented some fat or mass on the back, but on the front, as you can see, it's more thinner compared to the design by Hiya Toys. So this one really is more movie accurate. And then lastly, of course, if you look at the legs, this one has more mass on the inner thigh, while on the SH Monster Arts figure, it's basically thin, and that goes all the way down to the legs. So in terms of how they designed this figure, this figure is more movie accurate, and of course you would probably forgive SH Monster Arts for that, because when this figure was released, it's right around the same time when the movie was released. This one, on the other hand, was released way after the movie was released. So they had all they actually could watch the actual movie before building this figure. So there's more time for them to create this figure than when SH Monster Arts did theirs. So yeah, so that's basically, I'm not saying that I'm not giving SH Monster Arts a free pass by any means, you know, and I hope that they did the figure this way compared to this one, and you would argue that, you know, they've seen legendary Godzilla back in 2019, but they still went with this design and didn't improve it when Godzilla vs. Kong was released, considering that we're still gonna see the same Godzilla anyway. Whereas, you know, Hiya Toys did their homework, and I failed to mention the tail, of course. This one has a thicker tail compared to this one. But anyway, going back, yeah, so it's really not supposed to be a free pass on Godzilla. I think that, you know, there's just really gonna be some minor tweaks to the sculpt in order for this to look this way, but they still didn't do it. So they didn't make the sticker, they didn't make the legs thicker, they didn't slope the head the right way, and the neck is just still thinner compared to what the real legendary Godzilla looks like. So anyway, moving on with the articulation. So you've already seen the articulation on the head. So again, so the mouth moves up and down. So it's basically connected by a hinge on the cheek right there. The neck is basically two ball joints. So there's one ball joint here, and then it's connected right around on the base of the neck. So this neck piece is basically dangling all over the place. And for me, that's one of the few flaws on this figure. And then the shoulders are connected by a ball joint. The elbows is connected by a hinge and a swivel combo. A hinge and a swivel combo. And then the wrist is connected by a ball joint. We also have an ab crunch that's connected by a ball joint, it seems. So it looks up all the way that far, and that's just because of the sculpt, and move side to side as well. And then the thighs are connected by a ball joint. The knees are a double ball joint, it seems. Yeah, so it still moves all the way around. And then finally, the ankles are connected by a ball joint. The tail, just like the SH Monster Arts and the NECAs, they're connected by ball joints. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 ball joints all the way to the tail. But just like the implementation of SH Monster Arts and NECA, because of the scope, it limits the movement of the whole tail, which is basically acceptable. Anyway, yeah, I forgot to mention the paint application. So moving on, the paint application. I love how they painted the figure. It's matte, as matte can be. There are some hints of, and so I love how they dry brush the whole figure. And there is a combination excuse me, there's a combination of brown and gray and whites on the figure, a little hint of green probably. And I like how they painted the whole figure. It's not hastily painted, in my opinion. It looks rugged, but you know, the dry brushing doesn't really stand out unnecessarily, which is really good. And for me, that kind of highlights all of the amazing sculpt that they've done on this figure. So yeah, now comparing it to the other figures that you might have in your collection. So for example, this is your legendary Godzilla from SH Monster Arts. So as you can see, there is quite a size difference. Actually, it's not little, it's more than an inch. So this stands at around 7.5 inches. Godzilla, on the other hand, stands at around 6.5 inches. And I lost the tail right there. So anyway, now I also have here the SH Monster Arts Mechagodzilla. So Mechagodzilla is around 8 inches tall, or 7.5 inches tall. And as you can see, it of course, since this is an SH Monster Arts figure, it scales better, it scales perfectly with the SH Monster Arts Godzilla. But just for size comparison, as you can see, it's still a tad taller than Godzilla, but as it's obvious that they don't really scale that well, which for me is another point of consideration if you're trying to build your collection. So if you are a fan of the Godzilla franchise in general, that's where the whole thing, you know, that's kind of like a decision making thing for you. So since this is a different line, it's not made by Bandai, it was not meant to be scaled for Bandai. So all of your Godzilla figures, whether it's SH Monster Arts or all of your Bandai figures, whether it's SH Monster Arts, SH Figure Arts, or Bandai Movie Monsters series, it's not gonna scale with this figure. It's not gonna scale well with this figure because this figure is basically bigger than all of the figures that Bandai has released. Why they chose the 7.5 inches tall for this figure, my guess is that it's because it's actually easier to produce joints for a bigger figure than producing joints for a much smaller figure. So you can just imagine just the ball joints on the tail and how it's going to be produced. It has to be produced with much more precision if you're dealing with smaller joints. The same is true with most of the details on the figure. Adding an inch, inch and a half on the height or on the overall scale of the figure means that there is more room for error when you're doing all of these details on the figure and all of the painting that you want to do with the figure. Actually, something that I also failed to mention when we're talking about the paint application, despite having that size advantage over the SH Monster Arts, something that I didn't like was how they painted the eyes. So for me, they tried, yes, but I feel like they should have tried better. I mean, if you look at the eyes, it's brown and then it has that white dot on the middle and that's it. And it doesn't come with any sort of sheen on the eyes, which is supposed to be there. Considering that it's already bigger than your SH Monster Arts figure, I feel like they should have done that as well. But what's nice about this figure, and something that's very obvious to a lot of collectors, is that you're getting a much movie accurate figure for a much lesser cost. So this figure costs around $50, $40, and they're even releasing a King Ghidorah for $100. Imagine. So yeah. And SH Monster Arts released their King Ghidorah for close to $300, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, in terms of price, you are getting a premium figure here, and it's way more premium than what NECA released back in the day. There's no shortcuts whatsoever. If you can see when they sculpted everything, it's really well thought of. Even the design, especially the design and the sculpt of the figure. In terms of articulation, the articulation is well enough for me to say that it's premium. You would argue that, you know, SH Monster Arts builds their figures with most of it are ball joints, and some people would say that they have more premium articulation than this figure. I beg to disagree. Actually, I feel like how they implemented the joints here would last you know, a great more deal than what SH Monster Arts did with their figure. So as you can see, this tail is already starting to get loose, and part of the reason there is because of the scale. So this is 6 inches, so the joints are basically smaller, whereas this is 7 inches where the joints are basically bigger. So because of that, you're getting more durability on the joints. So for the price, it's really good. I feel like they could have implemented the same way here on how they implemented the neck for SH Monster Arts. That's something that they could have done here and would have solved this weird looking neck piece here. But anyway, yeah, so do I like the figure? Of course. Do I feel like I should have kept mine? Probably not. And this is probably controversial. Why? Because the thing is, we customize toys. If we want this thing to look like this one, we could. And I'm confident in saying that we could easily tweak all of that details and put it here. But the thing is, we'd rather not, because I feel like I like how they did the SH Monster Arts figure. It's an artist's take on Godzilla, and it was released prior to what, you know, prior to the movie, or at least at the same time as the movie. So yes, it's more movie accurate. It's better than NECA, and by all means, it's gonna be an awesome figure down the line. But the question there is, especially on my, and one of the reasons why I actually sold my figure was because most of my figures are SH Monster Arts figures. So I already have a Mechagodzilla that works with this figure. I already have a Kong that works with this figure. And all the Japanese Godzillas and all the other Japanese Godzilla franchise kaijus are on scale with this figure. So if I want to do a diorama of a crossover between this figure and say Megalon or Titanosaurus, or you know, the Showa Mechagodzilla or the Showa King Ghidorah, I could always do that and pull it off. Whereas with this figure, you're gonna wait for the whole line to mature. You know, you're gonna wait for Mothra, and I'm sure it's gonna blow your mind. You're gonna wait for Rodan, you're gonna wait for King Ghidorah, you're gonna wait for Mechagodzilla, and how long is that gonna take? I mean, I don't know if they're even gonna do all of it. And that's the thing, you know, when NECA released their figures, we were so happy that somebody already picked the tab. And I'm hoping that they will do all of the Godzilla figures, considering that they have a license with Toho. I'm really rooting for them to do that. And another thing that I was kind of irked off is the fact that they stopped production on this Godzilla and the other Godzilla figures that was pretty successful. I don't know why they suddenly became so conservative, considering that they practically sold out. So, you know, it's kind of like, you know, when you're collecting watches and they produce like a limited release, and they want everybody to jump the gun and buy all of their figures. And the fact of the matter is, at that price point, you shouldn't really be scared of releasing more figures. I guess that's just my opinion. But anyway, yeah, if they have scaled this down to this scale, it's a no-brainer. I'd probably get this figure and all the other figures on their line. But since they decided to make the scale bigger, and now I have to think of selling my entire collection and focus on this one, I don't think so. And that's kind of like the bummer thing for me. It is, yeah, I'm not gonna be, you know, I'm not gonna shelf all of this so that I can have room for the figures that they are going to produce, and which I don't even know if they are going to produce all of it. So yeah, it is a nice figure. It's bang for the buck. For me, it's an awesome figure. I mean, look at it. It looks amazing, especially if done right. Like if they were able to pull off the neck piece. But other than that, you know, if you are an SH Monster Arts collector like me, and you have a lot of room for your shelf for another line of Godzilla figures, which probably a lot of us do anyway. So yeah, this figure is really perfect. I mean, it looks really nice. But if you are going to choose whether, you know, are you going to continue collecting the SH Monster Arts figures, or, you know, wait for Hiya Toys to mature, I would rather that you stick with what you have. So for me, this is not bad, but this is perfect. Okay, for Legendary Godzilla, this is perfect. But Yeah, this is not bad at all. Okay, so that wraps up our review of the Hiya Toys Exquisite Basic Godzilla figure. So yeah, again, this is really a perfect, if I might say so, this is the perfect Godzilla, legendary Godzilla figure. The scale is perfect. For me, this is really what a Godzilla figure should scale. I only wish that SH Monster Arts did this scale instead of this one. But I have no qualms. They are an awesome company, and I hope they continue doing awesome figures as well. So what I like about the 7.5, 8-inch scale is, you know, it's, you could build the joints better, and you could build all the details much better and much clearer. It's not too small and it's not too big, and you could still see an imposing figure on this better than your SH Monster Arts figure. Anyway, they are, if you missed out on this figure, I believe they are going to pre-order the atomic version, so similar to the color scheme of this one. So it's not too late. But I hope that Hiya Toys would increase their production so that the what happened to Kong and Godzilla doesn't happen to their other figures. But anyway, so yeah, again, that wraps up our review. Huge shout out to my fellow Godzilla collector, Angelo James G, for hooking us up with one of these figures. Thank you for lending us your figure. You are gonna get your figure tomorrow. And yeah, so I guess that's it for me, folks. Again, thank you for supporting the channel. Thank you for watching this video. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel. And you could also follow us on our other social media platforms. You could follow us on Facebook, The Hobbyist. You could also check us out on our Instagram account, The_Hobbyist. So yeah, again, thank you guys for watching this video. Thank you for supporting the channel, and I will see you guys soon. Peace.